Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa. I'm James Creedon. These are our headlines from across the continent this evening. A Paris appeals court has rejected a request to reopen an investigation into the 1994 death of Rwanda's then president in a plane crash. That crash was a key trigger in the genocide of the Tutsis. More on the cancelling of that highly sensitive investigation coming up at the top of the show. Major political turmoil continues in Mali with ongoing calls from the opposition for the resignation of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. We'll bring you all the details on that ongoing political crisis. And elephants are dying in numbers much higher than usual in Botswana. We'll take a look at that tragic phenomenon that is confounding scientists. Thanks for watching. Now, a Paris appeals court has brought to an end a highly sensitive investigation centering on a key trigger that set off the genocide of the Tutsis in Rwanda. A plane crash that had amongst its passengers the then Rwandan president. The crew of that plane was French, hence the involvement of French courts, but France-Rwanda relations were badly soured by the probe. The Justice Minister of Rwanda welcomed Friday's decision. President Paul Kagame's supporters had denounced the investigation as an attempt to exonerate France from any role in causing the genocide. Rabah Abbas and Sanam Chantier take a look at the history of that case.
It was a tragedy that sparked the Rwandan genocide. On April 6, 1994, the plane carrying President Juvenal Habyarimana, a moderate Hutu, was shot down just before it was due to land in Kigali. Within hours, mass ethnic killings erupted across the country, targeting members of the Tutsi minority and moderate Hutus. When it was all over, 100 days later, 800,000 people were slaughtered in the last genocide of the 20th century. The crew of the downed presidential Falcon was French, and it was France which 4 years later launched an investigation into the crash following a request from families of the plane crew. In 2006, the first judge assigned to the case, that's Jean-Louis Procureur, accused the Rwandan Patriotic Front, led in 1994 by the current Rwandan president, Paul Kagame, of bringing down the plane. Procureur issued arrest warrants against 9 members of the RPF. The move prompted the severing of diplomatic ties between Paris and Kigali, only restored 3 years later. For Rwanda, the case was politically motivated. Kigali accused France of trying to cover up its own alleged complicity in the Rwandan genocide, a charge France has consistently denied. In 2012, a new judge, Marc Trévidic, visited the crash site with a team of experts. In his final report, he concluded the missile that brought Habyarimana's plane down could have been from an army barracks used by the Hutu president's guards. Rwandan authorities of the time welcomed this new hypothesis.
We've been waiting 17 years for this news. 17 years of suspicions, manipulations, incriminations, campaigns aimed at destabilizing the government. We can't say it loudly enough. This news comes as a relief.
In December 2017, French anti-terrorist judges said they were closing the case, paving the way for the Paris prosecutor to recommend that the charges be dropped, citing insufficient evidence against the suspects. French judges have now rejected the request to reopen the investigation.
9 Malian soldiers have been killed in an ambush in the centre of the country. The deaths took place as the soldiers made their way to the site of a civilian massacre that left 30 dead on Wednesday. Officials did not immediately blame any group, but the central Bankas region of Mali has become one of the flashpoints of unrest in the country. The Fulani herding community is in a long-standing conflict with Dogon farming communities there. Now, staying in Mali, negotiations have been ongoing between the ruling party and an opposition coalition that has been calling for the resignation of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. The leader of that opposition coalition is a popular imam, Mahmoud Dicko, who had previously been close to the president. But a worsening socio-economic crisis has seen major political tensions boil over in the capital, Bamako. Let's take a look now at this report detailing attempts to resolve that political crisis.
Nous sommes au milieu, nous devons être à la fin de cette lutte. The man firing up the crowd is an ally to Mahmoud Dicko, the imam who wants to bring down the Malian president. In the presence of community leaders in Bamako, Muhammad Touré continues to organize protests against Ibeka's regime, a campaign area set up in what is called the Greens. These are popular venues chosen by the M5, a coalition of opposition parties who have been seeking the resignation of Mali's head of state.
Pour nous, la seule façon de disséminer les valeurs, les objectifs que poursuit le M5 RFP, c'est de convier nos chefs de grains qui sont venus de l'ensemble des quartiers pour que eux, simplement à leur retour, ils puissent mobiliser leurs camarades jeunes à se mettre dans cette mouvance de changement.
After successful protests in June, this coalition is trying to create branches in every corner of the capital by winning over key neighborhoods in Bamako, a strategy first used by the civil movement Espoir Mali Koura. Filmmaker Sheikh Oumar Sissoko is one of the leaders behind the movement. He is already working on the post-Ibeka era with the dissolution of parliament and a constituent assembly. The opposition wants to show that they have a plan.
Nous sommes ouverts aux discussions, au dialogue, mais jusque-là, nous maintenons le cap. Le cap, c'est la démission d'Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta et de son régime. Nous voulons faire un corps politique qui contribue donc à la partie qui va suivre après, c'est-à-dire la transition.
However, in the camp of supporters of the regime, a political response has been prepared. Even if the government officially reaches out and calls for dialogue with the opposition, accepting the president's resignation is out of the question, and the opposition seems to have heard the message.
Donc nous sommes là pour soutenir le président, pour soutenir la vision du président, pour soutenir les actions du président. L'opposition est dans sa mission. Nous avons en charge la destinée du pays. C'est nos actions qui doivent parler.
Behind the scenes, negotiations between the regime and the opposition continue, but both sides plan to take to the streets, a battle that plunges the country further into a long socio-political crisis.
Ceasefire negotiations have started in Cameroon between the government and 9 different leaders of a separatist movement in the country's 2 English-speaking regions. More than 3,000 people have been killed in the conflict since separatists declared independence. The 9 separatist leaders are members of the interim government of the self-declared state of Ambazonia. All are in jail in the capital Yaoundé on terrorism charges. Uganda has offered a safe haven to thousands of people fleeing escalating violence in eastern DR Congo. The refugees had been stranded between the 2 countries in a remote and isolated area with COVID-19 restrictions preventing them from crossing into Uganda. Laurent Berstecker has the story.
Stuck in no man's land for over a month after fleeing violence in eastern DRC, these refugees could be approaching the end of their journey. As the COVID-19 pandemic rages on, Uganda agreed Wednesday to temporarily open its borders to thousands of asylum seekers on humanitarian grounds.
We don't have much land. Our country is small, but we still allow them out of sympathy. I wish the international community also becomes sympathetic and help these people.
Like many others, Anurith fled her village with her 2 children and hopes to make a new life for herself in Uganda. Yet before they can settle, these refugees have to abide by a series of sanitary measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19. After being screened and tested, they must remain quarantined for 2 weeks in this temporary camp set up by the United Nations.
It's a very special emergency. It's the first time people are crossing in the middle of the COVID situation. You need to play smart to put all in place.
With nearly 1.5 million refugees, Uganda is currently the largest refugee-hosting country in Africa. The UN has vowed to work closely with local authorities to provide logistical support and humanitarian aid to help meet the needs of these new arrivals.
The mysterious death of hundreds of elephants in Botswana has left authorities and scientists baffled. An unusually high number of elephant carcasses was first noted at the start of May in the north of the country and has continued since then. Authorities have yet to determine a cause of death. Be warned, some may find this footage upsetting. Pierre Delrieux reports.
Over 350 elephants found dead in the past 3 months. all in Botswana's famed Okavango Delta. Some carcasses were discovered clustered around waterholes. Others appear to have died falling flat on their faces.
It seemed they were even dying, very suddenly in some of the cases. The carcasses were animals that had fallen down while walking.
Botswana is home to 130,000 African elephants, the world's largest population. The Delta alone is home to some 15,000 individuals. Last year, the government scrapped a 5-year elephant hunting ban, sparking international outcry. But poaching seems to be ruled out as the cause of these recent deaths.
We think at this juncture is not poaching because all the carcasses that have been identified are identified intact with ivory.
3 laboratories in Canada, South Africa, and Zimbabwe have been asked to process samples taken from the bodies. For now, the investigation seems to have ruled out natural anthrax poisoning, which killed at least 100 elephants in Botswana last year.
One of the likely candidates at first was anthrax, which is common in Botswana, but it's the wrong time of year for that, so that has been ruled out. And that we did have an outbreak in November of last year. And I'm sure the avenues being investigated are likely to be a bacteria infection or indeed a virus.
The African elephant is classified as vulnerable in the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List. A Pan-African survey conducted in 2016 revealed that between 2007 and 2014, elephant numbers plummeted by at least 30%.
Pierre Delrieux with that report, and he also produced tonight's show. Thanks to him and all the team, and thanks to you for watching. Good night.